Attendees. My name is Marisol Morales and I serve as the Vice President for Network Leadership with Campus Compact. We're so happy to have you here today, and we hope that you and your families and communities are doing well. I'm going to get started with a land acknowledgement. As a step towards honoring the truth and achieving healing and reconciliation, Campus Compact seeks to acknowledge the traditional native lands on which we stand. Given that we are gathering for today's webinar from across the country and some from around the world, we invite you to acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of the Native people where you are joining us, and feel free to add that in the chat. I myself am participating from Chicago, which is located on the traditional homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi nations. Many other tribes, such as the Miami, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Sac, and Fox, also call this area home. The region has long been a center for Indigenous people to gather, trade, and maintain kinship ties. Today, as one of the largest urban American Indian communities in the United States, reside in Chicago. Members of this community continue to contribute to the life of this city and to celebrate their heritage, practice traditions, and care for the land and waterways. We also want to recognize and stand in solidarity with those individuals who are continuing to call for racial justice and equitable communities, and affirm that Black Lives Matter. We commit to move beyond words into programs and actions that fully embody a commitment to full participation and equity. Again, we're so happy to have you as part of today's webinar titled Increasing International Connections to Knowledge Mobilization with our presenters, whom I will be introducing shortly. I just want to make an announcement at this point. We're hosting our second round of the Fusion course. The Fusion course is about enhancing online education through community-based learning. This fall, we will be having 3 sections of the Fusion course, each running 2 weeks between the end of October and December. And this training provides support for faculty as they adapt to online teaching with community engagement. You can find out information about the Fusion course and register for it on the Campus Compact website, compact.org. So let me now begin by introducing our speakers for today. First, I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Tryon. She works with faculty, staff, and students across disciplines, facilitating and developing community-based learning and research and projects with special focus on community partner relationships from local to global. She manages several grant programs and is co-chair of the Wisconsin Without Borders Alliance, a cross-campus interdisciplinary initiative to promote further good practice in global engagement, as well as she is an active member of the International Living Knowledge Network. She's co-editor of the Unheard Voices Community Organizations and Service Learning and facilitates workshops in North America and Europe. Next, I'd like to introduce Leonardo de la Torre. With degrees in sociology and social communication sciences, Leonardo has specialized in migration, return, circular migration, and development. He has been awarded with the National and Latin American Social Communication Research Prizes and licentiate degree level, and is with the National Journalism Prize for Human Development. Leonardo has worked as a consultant for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He has participated in collective debate and construction of new migration law and new migration policies, and worked as a lecturer in human mobility subjects for Bolivian consular personnel around the world. Currently, Leonardo is writing a novel. Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Fluoresce Piron. Dr. Fluoresce Piron is an anthropologist and ethicist, professor in the Department of Information and Communications at Université Laval in Quebec, where she teaches critical thinking through courses on ethics, democracy, and methodology. She is currently at the heart of several research action projects aimed at promoting and disseminating academic knowledge in sub-Saharan Africa and Haiti and developing Indigenous research capacity. She is founding president of the association Science et Bien Commun and the Science Shop, Accès Savoir at the Université Laval. She is interested in the links between science, society, and culture, both as a researcher and as an activist for more open, inclusive, socially responsible science. She presents widely in a variety of settings, both within and outside the academic world. And finally, Norbert Steinhaus, who holds a diploma in agriculture. He has been a board member of Bond Science Shop since 1990. For the last 18 years, he cooperated in international projects on citizen participation in science and technology, or responsible research and innovation. Currently, he is involved in the EC-funded bioeconomy projects Bloom and All Things BioPro, and he coordinates the Horizon 2020 project Verifica on climate change adaptation. Since 2007, he has been the coordinator of Living Knowledge and the International Science Shop Network. He is a member of the Mission Assembly for Soil Health and Food for the upcoming European Research Framework Program, Horizon Europe, and was active in the network of European national contacts, Points of Science and for Society, as member of the expert group in the area of public engagement. Additionally, he is a peer reviewer and on the advisory board for Gateways, International Journal for Community Research and Engagement, and a peer reviewer and associate editor for Research for All. So welcome to our presenters today, and I'll turn it over to you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Marisol, and thanks also to the panelists for joining us today in various time zones across the globe. Our goals for today are to be sharing knowledge with a US audience about how science shops work and the different infrastructures that are used in different countries around helping to answer questions around responsible research innovations and other knowledge mobilizing and knowledge democracy. The person that probably has a very global view of this for many years would be Norbert Steinhaus, so I will let him start out and explain some of the history of this movement.
Thank you very much, Beth, and thank you very much, Marisol, for inviting me to this event. And just guten Abend aus Bonn. Hier ist es 9 Uhr abends und ich bin sehr froh, dass ich heute Abend dabei sein darf. So, thank you very much. Greetings from Bonn. It's 9 p.m. over here, and I'm happy to be here and share some of the stories we had with science shops. Just to give you a bit of history, the science shops developed in the late 60s of last century. Oh my God, this sounds weird. But let me say the real boost in development of science shops happened at the turn of the century when the European Commission, the research organization from European Union, decided that society has to be brought closer to research. And the first activity of science shops definitely was born in a hot tub over in the US when a European commissioner called our colleague and asked, don't you want to write a proposal for a European funding call? And they thought it was a joke, but we did, and this was the birth of Living Knowledge and the first international cooperation of science shops. Science shops in general started with the approach to link civil society needs to research resources. And based in universities, there's of course the opportunity to create win-win situations by solving community problems, contributing to the education of students by letting them work on a real life problem, but also contributing to the, let me say, the PR of the university, demonstrating that they're working for the community, that they're embedded in the community. Please excuse me when I from time to time talk about civil society, or I think this is the European word for community, or close to it. Yes, and since 2000, there were a couple of support activities from on the European level to spread the possibility to link science and society. Different programs were set up with different funding, with different budget. In the first round, it was called Science and Society. Then it was Science for Society. The latest was called Science with and for Society. Yeah, so we and of course, science shops were not the only way to link communities to research, but it was one model which was supported. Within the last years, another concept developed within the Science with and for Society activities, which was called responsible research and innovation, which tried to combine different policy agendas on gender, on open access, on public engagement, on science education, and on governance, and try to bring all these different policy environments into one pot, under one umbrella. Unfortunately, lately the term responsible research and innovation was too complicated to be accepted by a larger research community, so that now the focus shifted a bit to different terms. But let me say, the concepts are still alive, and of course from the background of science shops, it's the concept of public engagement and serving societal needs with the resources which are available on different levels, mainly on the university level, but also from outside. And as you probably have heard or heard between the lines of what I was saying, there are different concepts for science shops throughout which developed during the years of existence. Just to give you our story of Bonn Science Shop, when we heard about the concept of science shops, we were so excited and addressed Bonn University. This was in 1984, and university looked at us and said, "Oh no, again, these long hair, left-winged students come up with this strange concept. No, we cannot integrate this in our university structure." That's why we decided to register as a non-for-profit organization. And so throughout the network of science shops, there different models have developed to fit best into the local environment, into the local setting. So there's no one size fits all. Of course, the university model is something which seems to be the most appropriate, but it also works in different ways. And when you look at some definitions, you definitely can start. But I think one of the most important terms in our understanding of working in this field of society and research is look at the work you do, not at the name you use. And I think this is what expresses it at best. Living knowledge, just to get back to this one, it's an international network, but not a registered organization. It's an open network. Whoever feels that his or her work contributes to the science-society relations, or let me say it the other way around, society-science relations, is welcome to join the network, to share experience, to learn about what others are doing. And I think at the moment we have about 100 science shops around the world, and Fluoresce will probably tell about her activities with reaching out to the French-speaking African countries with new activities and setting up science shop structures. So huge network, and I'm finished. Questions are welcome, and yeah.
We'll get back to more about living knowledge during the discussion, Norbert, but that was a really good overview. And I just put the link to your main website in the chat. So people who have never heard of it can go there and check it out. There's tons of resources, and also there will be information about the next conference, which we hope and pray will be in Groningen, Netherlands in June of 2021.
Yeah, but please take the blank away between living and knowledge. So that's.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Otherwise, you might get lost when looking for it.
That was a typing error. Okay, so we will turn to Fluoresce now to give a depiction of one model of science shop used in Canada, which is very close to the US.
Hello, merci beaucoup de l'invitation. So I will start my talk by telling you how I came to decide that it was essential for me as an intellectual, a researcher, and a citizen to find a way to open science and research to civil society, to community, and make it more socially responsible. During my master's degree 30 years ago, I studied the scientific explanations of the overrepresentation of Aboriginal people in Canadian prisons. I then discovered that this explanation, scientific explanation, disseminated and used in public debate, had power effects on Aboriginal peoples, reinforcing their marginalization, especially because they were not listened to, they were devoiced. I've just learned this word. Some of these explanations pointed to what is now known as systemic racism in the justice system, but other explanations, especially in sociology and criminology, ended up making us believe in a social determinism leading all Aboriginal people to delinquency. This belief, thus legitimized by science, undermined the credibility of Aboriginal nations' efforts to achieve greater self-governance within Canada. My conclusion was that social science was not neutral, especially when working with subalternized groups. Realizing that my desire to advance knowledge would forever be inseparable from my social conscience and my desire for a more just, equitable, and inclusive society, I have been trying to find ways to limit the power effects of social science on subalternized groups. One thing became obvious. It was necessary not only to give them a voice at the very heart of the research process, but also to involve them in the design of these projects. Action research became for me the heart of an ethics of social responsibility for research. But I also quickly understood that this position was itself marginalized from conventional hegemonic performance-based science, dominated by the publish or perish syndrome, the cult of rankings of all kinds, and the quest for funding. Understanding the essential role of the university in the perpetuation of this kind of attitude of science, I looked for ways to subvert this scientific socialization, to transform it from within. Shortly after obtaining a regular professorship, I discovered the European science shops, particularly the one in Belfast. And I deemed that this type of program, which opens the university to the concerns of civil society, could be a solution. The science shop for me is a program that associates an undergraduate or graduate course with a demand for knowledge or skills from a civil society organization that does not have the means to respond it by itself. So the class, under the supervision of the professor, responds to the request free of charge by carrying out an intervention of a research project that corresponds to the subject being taught. In other words, the science shop facilitates both experiential learning and local development. Since this concept requires little in terms of staff and, in my version, funding, it is a good way, it seemed to me, of making a university a major player in local development by strengthening not just industry, but also civil society. So this is why I created our science shop in my university almost 10 years ago. When I started working on open science in the French-speaking sub-Saharan Africa and Haiti, it was natural for me to introduce the academics I was working with to the concept of science shops as a tool of social responsibility and openness to society for their universities. To make a long story short, I managed to mobilize about 10 teams who decided to test the concept. Well, after 2 years, we decided together to answer Inspire's call. Leonardo will speak about it, I'm sure. And the Inspire's consortium call, and to propose a project that would make the shops work together on a first real project with a local partner in Senegal. The co-construction of a qualitative database with narratives of climate change collected by 100 students, 10 per science shop, from farmers in 7 countries and Haiti. The concept of this project, the ANAI project, is to showcase local knowledge about climate change in Africa and Haiti, and to show how they can complement conventional science knowledge about climate change. We could thus enhance the value of this often marginalized knowledge, as well as African languages and cultures. We used a citizen science tool, an application for Android called EpiCollect, that allowed students to work without web on the basis of the same questionnaire. And we collected 450 narratives, more than 1,000 photos in 55 languages, with a translation into French. This project was only possible by decentralizing the research, considering local knowledge in African languages as precious, and by relying on collaborative work, the commitment of each and every one of us in relation to a major social, political, and environmental issue. And we are now in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Florence. And I've just posted what I have looked up for indexation for one of the projects. I'll have to do some more searching to find them in English, but I know you can use Google Translate as well. And I just want to say before Leonardo speaks how grateful I am that all of you using English as your non-native language are so willing to help out with speaking English every time I go to a Living Knowledge conference, because it's really a very unjustified privilege that Americans and British and Australians have, and Canadians, except the Quebecois, that we normally have English as our first language when we go to these meetings, and sometimes our host is in a country where English is never really spoken in daily life. So I just wanted to call you in for being so willing to speak in English for me today. So I'll turn it to Leonardo to talk about a story he has to share.
Yes, and now your panelists and the attenders will hear some of the problems of a non-English speaker now challenging your ears. I'm sorry for this. Yes, and it's a privilege to be taking notes from Norbert and Florence's experience and yourself, Bet, and then to propose just our short story to share. But I was also shocked at the beginning when Marisol and some of the participants and even Florence talk about indigenous populations. And coming from Bolivia, I just can tell that civil society or community, however you name it, actually can change the political power in a country. Civil society knows how to change stuff. I mean, scientifics are long behind the powerful of their movements, and in Bolivia we know that. But now, coming from this tradition, how I fit living now in Barcelona, where I am working, how I fit into the European concept of science shop, and so our story with our humble experience comes from that. Well, I work with Bolivian population here I'm taking notice of the time. Yes, so I'm working here as I said, in Barcelona, attending Bolivian and Andean migrants in general, which attend to a hospital here to take care of a special disease that we have in the Americas called Chagas disease. It's a silent killer that kills 7,000 each year, and it's estimated that 7 million people are living with this infection. It could severely damage heart and intestinal tract. And here in Spain, it is estimated that between 50,000 and 87,000 people are living here. So it's migrants. So the president of an organization in another close city from here named Zaragoza, this president knew that there was a service that was offering this test to Bolivian population, and he called. I was really here in this same room when I got that call. And he said, oh, you know, I'm president of a Bolivian organization here in Zaragoza, and I want my people, my colleagues to get to this test and to be, how can I do it? So it was the very first time I got a call from a civil society organization asking my center to do something. We were always the initiative ones. We were always looking for them. That was the very first time I went to the doctor that it was running my center, and I said, we have this call, how can we manage? And at that time, there was no possibility to answer that call. They told me, you know, it's another city, we don't know who to call. Let's wait. So we wait for almost a year. And then when the opportunity came, we called back from here as well. And we could offer the opportunity to start it as a science shop project in a science shop modality. Because we had the very most important thing that, that Florence also mentioned, a true social demand. Someone was asking us to do something, and it was true. I knew it was not my invention. So with this possibility, we started looking for the allies, and it was how, and this is how we met the hospital in Zaragoza and the association themselves, and we found them in the good mood, in the mood for love, to get seated in a table and to think this health campaign all together. At the end, we organized the path, the access path, and all the association members attended the test. But we also conduct qualitative research, and we get to know which are the barriers that inhibit the active search for an access for a test in Chagas disease. So we also developed together with this CSO research on this, and also we produced a lot of communicational material that they, as social experts, because they have the knowledge, as Norbert knows, everyone has, and this is with them that we have generated a material, and that is now spreading to other communities. But my specialized medical center found it impossible at the beginning. We made it possible through the Inspires project. We are now coming to the end of our project, and I'm really sure it will be a pleasure for us to share with you I will leave my link here. Our project gather us with other 7 well-experienced practitioners in science shops, and we are running more or less 80 projects in these 4 years. We have even been able to launch this call, Florence mentioned, and 6 new projects from several locations in the world started to work under this umbrella, and we are collecting incredible experience, because and with this I finish, it really doesn't matter how you do it and how you meant to survive, to stand up when the finance is gone, but the challenging and magnificent possibility of participatory research under the Science Shop umbrella or others is an opportunity for traditional researchers to finally, and I'm going to quote Norbert here, it's science communication the other way around. How to make scientifics understand you as a community member, because you can change science. So we just want to comment this. Oh, thank you for sharing our webpage. I was just to do so, and we also have developed several outcomes. One of them is actually a tool that we are launching in order for participatory projects to measure the impact somehow of their projects, and we will be able to talk about that in the questions and answers.
Very good. Thank you. Muchas gracias, Leonardo. And
Gracias.
you said that your logo is a hummingbird, and I love the beautiful story you told that it's very difficult to see a hummingbird perching on a branch, but then?
Yes. Actually, I only know somebody I really appreciate that told me that she once saw one posing her feeding. So we believe that our hummingbird has flight and inspires my organization for 4 years. But when the money is gone, let's see if the hummingbird stays and if it's possible for participatory research to be taken seriously in the organization. So we have that challenge still ahead of us.
That's a beautiful metaphor. You mentioned that, and your colleague Anne-Sophie was going to join us, but she had a family obligation, and she is working on this impact evaluation tool. Marisol is going to post for our attendees a poll. You can go ahead and do that now, Marisol. And we are in a very hot and heavy election season over here in the US, so it's appropriate today that you get to vote for the top ideas that you would like to talk about. So just take a moment to look over what this quick poll says. Don't think about it too long. And from listening to what people are talking about so far, what would be one of the things you would like us to start talking about in a discussion? And while we're waiting for a minute on that, Leonardo, could you share briefly what Anne-Sophie's tool looks like? It's digital?
Yes, of course. Yes, for me it would be a pleasure. I don't know if I can. Yes, and it is virtual. It's both a repository of participatory projects, so you will find there a lot of already listed projects, not but above all, it is a tool that as a science or project manager or a project manager of a city science project, for example, enters the information of a project, and then this system generates questionnaires. It all starts with a qualitative questionnaire that all the parts involved, all the stakeholders take as an opportunity to talk about their expectations on the project. So it's a qualitative union the tool proposes. And then after this, it sends a quickly questionnaire through email for the four persons or the four characters that actually characterize a science project, the most traditional one. A student, to the student receives the questionnaire. Also the civil society organization representative, or many representatives from the civil society organization, receive this questionnaire as well. Then the researcher, the professional researcher on the topic, and then the project manager himself. And the questionnaires are received at the beginning, at the mid-term of the project, when the project is finished, and 6 months after the project is finished. And the system generates an interesting graphic on the strengths and weakness of this project. It's not viewable for everyone, but it offers an opportunity to give evidence to these projects in your institutions, to tell that our project has gone through this. It's just one more tool, but it gives you an idea of the many dimensions a participatory project has fulfilled. So
I know it's really difficult sometimes to measure impact because so many factors explain change, and it also takes a really long time for real impact to happen in the community. If people go onto that Inspires Project website, I know that the tool is just emerging. Will there be an opportunity to visit a page that shows what the
yes,
tool looks
exactly.
like?
I've just written this down. It's appinspiresproject.com.
Okay.
So there's actually something a general viewer can take a look at.
Awesome.
But yes, and we have taken from the tradition, Andrea Vargiu, which has worked in the impact evaluation projects, that two consortiums that Norbert took part in and actually directed. They have, as many others, have already thought and advanced most of the needed steps in order to measure impact, and they know how impossible it is to really fully measure all the things and the 5 fevers and lives that a participatory project touches.
Awesome.
But something could be told through this app.
Okay. Thank you. It looks like the results are in, and they're even in red and blue. And on here, red is the one that has the most votes. Anyways, it looks like a lot of people are interested in talking more about these different approaches used in other countries to foster design of inclusive and sustainable research. And it also looks like the big barrier that people here see is the rigidity of institutional expectations and academic criteria, which Fluoresce alluded to, that we have the publish or perish mentality and the tenure clock, where you have to get, this many things done in this amount of time, which is not conducive to community-based participatory research. So I guess with those two things in mind, I wonder if we can strategize both together the design of research that allows people to overcome some of the barriers or work around them. We say grad students. Go ahead, Fluoresce.
Yes, I think in Canada we have an exceptional situation, because I think it was maybe 15 years ago, granting, how do you say, granting money, granting councils, how do you say that in American English?
Grantee,
Foundation.
funders.
The funders, yes. The public funders have decided to create special programs for action research, partnership research. So it is within, the heart of the academic system that we could get funding to do action research projects or research project with partners. And very recently, even our provincial public funder did the same and create a program called Citizen Engagement. So it is really, well, at least I think it is in social sciences and humanities. So really we have been blessed with these opportunities. And in fact, I've been able to get some money from that program, a lot of money to sustain the African science shops.
Okay.
So, and I mean, it's really an academic program. It's only for professors and so on. So I think that the Canadian model is really, could be an inspiration for National Council of Science or something like that. It's a very popular program, and it has produced wonderful research and research networks and so on.
Funding is so crucial because that also plays into faculty's tenure portfolio.
Yes, but also it's a way to legitimize action research. Because you got a grant from the public national public funder. So you are a researcher like another. So really, it's a wonderful situation.
Norbert, would you like to share some of the different ways that research projects are organized when you either use academic partners or even when you don't?
Yeah, so there are different aspects to this. Following Florence's story about the funding programs, European Union with the European Commission as an executive agency, 28 countries in the European Union. They set up a really big research funding program, and they provided throughout the different periods more and more money for these science society interactions. And this definitely was a big support for researchers willing to cooperate with communities. It was written in the call text that it was one of the selection criteria. Of course, always a problem with evaluators who did not understand concepts. So, but all these kind of challenges, of course, came with these funding programs. And projects follow the money. That means also researchers follow the money. And if there's one criterion in the call that says public engagement or open access or gender or education, then of course the research project has a specific element in it.
Right.
Throughout the years, I must confess that Germany was not the fastest on public engagement, putting this into national funding programs. We had a funding stream on activities on gender, on open access, on science education, and public engagement came in as latest. But now we can find these support programs, and they're experimenting. Approaches now are, that this, of course, we can discuss on a different level. The buzzword in Europe and the buzzword in Germany now is citizen science. And I know that from the poll, this had a quite low ranking. But anyway, this somehow replaces now the term of responsible research and innovation. I don't think that it's much easier to understand when you talk about citizen science. And again, within citizen science, different concepts come up. I really like the extreme citizen science, which definitely goes into the direction of science shop work, the bottom-up approach, the agenda setting through by communities, and the involvement of citizens, civil society organizations, and a broader stakeholder groups into the whole research process. And today, one big citizen science conference ended in Berlin, and I just quote from the opening keywords is that citizen science at the moment reproduces normative science. And this, I think this is one of the biggest problems we face when we enter this new terminology. And what we are working on is to make citizen science a transformative science. Mm-hmm. And so this definitely needs a mind shift on the funder side, it needs a mind shift on the researcher side, and it needs an openness and willingness to overcome barriers also from communities to address researchers with their demands, and they have to believe in their knowledge and in their expertise, which is definitely an added value for any kind of research or traditional academic research.
Would you say back in the early 2000s then, when a lot of the European Commission was voting to give these big grants, were they just so enlightened that they figured out that, oh, we should do this? Or did people come to them and pressure them and lobby them and say, no, you really need to be doing your funding calls like this so that civil society organizations can work together on problems, because otherwise the solutions won't work? Did they just know?
I think it was a bit of both, probably not 50-50. It was, I think lobbying by civil society organizations on the European level is still a tricky job. But we were there. Also, the Science Shop, the Living Knowledge Network was there. We had success we could provide and demonstrate from the early projects. And by that, it was taken up by many, many more organizations, not only science shops. And I think this is throughout, it took a long time. If you think from the start of science shops in 1968, 69, 1970 to now, it's 50 years. It's 20 years with European funding and probably 5 years with German funding. And so it's definitely a long way to go, and this was mentioned as one of the barriers. I think these in the poll, these are not only barriers in the US, these are barriers all over the world, because the academic system, the science system, is a global system. And here we face this similar problems with acknowledgement of participatory research in recognized journals. So I'm very happy that we have Research for All, and that we have, I forgot the name of the other one from Gateways. Thank you, Florence. So these are very important journals. They, flattened the path. It made it more easier to publish. I see probably in the new generation in the academic world, there's a more open ears for societal engagement within their research, but it's still we say a thick piece of wood to drill.
Yes, so that's the same thing that we deal with here. The young faculty are very interested in doing community engaged research, and they have the passion for it to surmount the barriers. Some are still denied tenure, but we are also working in a lot of institutions to change the tenure guidelines so that the research is valued differently. And also, when I was hearing you talk about the governments, we have the National Science Foundation and the National Institute for Health that do give big grants to academia, they've got something called broader impacts. And it was a tiny piece that a lot of times researchers would add on as an afterthought. Oh yeah, I'll publish my academic article and then I'll send a report to the community. And now, because I think in the US, academics are more interested in seeing equity in community engagement, they're putting the teeth into that. But Norbert?
Just one thing, because Florence mentioned SSHRC, the Social Sciences
Canada.
and Humanities Research Council in Canada, with the grants they have given. We from the Science Shop movement always took the impact from these funding program. We took it into our, let me say, policy recommendations. We need small grants for communities. It doesn't make sense if you have a grant of 1 million to run a research project. This is too big for small communities, so we need small grants. And I think really slowly, it gets into the heads of funders, so that smaller grants are available also from governmental organizations, not only from foundations.
Wonderful. Maybe follow up on SSHRC?
Yes, and SSHRC offers very quick grants. I mean, you have to wait only 3 months to have the money if your project is accepted. So small amount and very quick. So it's called partnership engagement, something like that. It's the beginning of a collaboration project. I wanted to add also about the young researchers that still I'm sorry, because we often accuse the US of being the bad boys, you know, with the impact journal factor and all these institutions that make all the research prisoner, you know. And so I really hope that the American researchers, young or not young, would really create a revolution and stop to all that rankings madness and concentrate on what is important. It's doing research for the good of humanity.
I agree.
Not for the marketing of some journals.
Yes.
So we count on you, American researchers.
Well, we're trying to change, and like I said, our younger faculty and our grad students are very interested. I wanted to remind the attendees that there's a question and answer button at the bottom of your screen, and you can ask a question on a different topic if you want, and we'll see it in the chat. Yeah, and so Leonardo, have you had an easy time navigating some of these barriers? Do you have strategies that have helped you overcome some of those issues in Barcelona?
Well, to be completely honest, we arrived to this community with a quite ambitious adjective we wanted to add to the Science Shop research itself, which was transformative research, and we talk about it. But the very first thing we get to learn from the living knowledge experienced practitioners is that they were transforming their practice every time, that they never stopped innovating, that actually transformative is our capacity to transform is capacity to adapt. And I want to, if you go to our web page, maybe one of the most important points is not our work, but it's the link to living knowledge and the background of the history of how they have managed to work with the notion of Science Shop. And at the very end, you will find a short video where, 50 seconds video where Norbert, Florence, and some others speaks about the important message for you. Emma McKenna says, one of the practitioners, it says, let's start with something short. Let's see where you get. If you have the passion, try it with something short and these small implications. And yes, regarding we are in a very bad situation, and we can't even imagine with coronavirus in Spain what's going to happen regarding economies and new funds and everything. But months before, we managed to hang ourselves from another buzzword as the one Norbert mentioned, and we are now part of a living lab, quite like the same thing, which is actually Rosina Malagrida, our most experienced, maybe one of the most experienced partners here in Barcelona, and ourselves as beginners. We have gotten some money from actually a financial institution with some social implication called La Caixa, a bank here, and they gave us short money to keep going with some challenges. And some of the issues we worked with in the Inspires project science shops are actually the one I quoted as an example in Chagas is also one of our challenges to keep going participatory, maybe into a more radical governance of the process itself, an agenda setting with the civil society organization. And so it could have any other label. It could be extreme citizen science. It could be just a science shop, a transformative science shop of RRI or bottom up, whatever. For us, it's an opportunity to adapt and to keep going. Yes, but I'm actually taking note of the very important the papers. I mean the magazines, where the journals, where we will be able to publish. Yes, and how we can show in our institutions that we can also publish with participatory process. Yes, they are longer, they are unpredictable, they challenge your nerves and your time settings, but they transform institutions and they transform. So and once, for example, projects like the one Florence quoted goes out with 450 stories collected on climate change in 50 something language.
I just put the full name for what SSHRC stands for, Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada. Thank you, Norbert, for helping me spell that correctly. And I'm not sure if they grant any money in the US, but Americans could look at their model and draw from it. Also, there are a few very successful science shops in the US. The closest one to us is the Center for Urban Research and Learning in Chicago at Loyola University. And Phil Neiden, who started that as a very old colleague of Norbert's and mine, and he's been at it since the late 80s doing science shop work there. They have a really great funding model where they are successful in getting large grants from private foundations that are interested in solving community issues using academic research to work with community partners together on big problems. Their biggest success story, yeah.
Well, go ahead, just finish your sentence. I just said I have a comment.
Okay. Their biggest success that I recall was that they reversed a funding decision by Congress, the US legislature, about some legal elderly immigrant population in Chicago that were going to have their housing subsidies cut. And because of the research that Curl did, they were able to publicize it in the Chicago Tribune and Telemundo all over the Western Hemisphere in Spanish-speaking TV. And it made the congressman ashamed, and he did not pull the funding. So I think the action piece of that is really important. Norbert, did you want to talk some about Curl?
Probably not about Curl, but about the funding background. What I think is a difference between North America and Europe. What I see in your environment is a lot of donation or money coming from foundations, and this is different in Europe. Of course, we have foundations, but all the research money, or almost all the research money, comes from governance structures. Yeah, so European Commission, national research funding ministries. Regional research ministries, like in the States we have in Germany, and therefore state money plays a much bigger role than, from my experience or my understanding, it plays in the US. So probably it has to do with some kind of influence, of course, money can have on the research to be done. Yeah, I don't know, but
we have to wind things up. Last comment.
Sorry?
We have to wind things up here. Do you want to give
No,
one
no, no,
last
no, no.
call?
This is a difference, and it of course needs a different approach when you ask for support for your activities. But may I ask Florence a question? Because I was you're looking at the time, yeah?
You can go ahead. You can
No,
go
just a simple question. You've been telling your story about all the narratives you collected from the African communities across different countries. What's the biggest impact when you look at this story, that these different communities were talking to each other, or that you received research data for you personal?
For me,
Yeah.
well, we are in the middle. We are finishing our colleague. For me, what is the most fascinating is the engagement of the students who are raised, to despise the old men and women in their villages, to see them as sources of knowledge, and the languages that they have been able to collect data in their own languages. For me, this will have a huge impact.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So from listening for me as well, yeah. So this is amazing, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks everybody for sharing such great stories.
Thank you all so much. I want to just take this opportunity to thank our panelists and our attendees, and all of you sharing the knowledge. I think it's really important for us who are based in the United States to be able to hear different perspectives from across the world around how this work is being done, and reminded me a lot of work that I saw taking place in Puerto Rico with around citizen science, and really involving local community in the work and research of the university, and having that help shape that. So we're really excited that you were all able to participate with us today. For those who are attendees, you should be receiving an email shortly with an evaluation. Please go ahead and fill that out. And again, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us, for being here across different time zones. And until next time, be well.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, and please don't be afraid to mail me if you have any further questions.
Awesome. If you all want to put your emails in the chat, you're welcome to do that too.
Yes,
Yeah.
I was just about to tell the same. I'm talking here in behalf of a project. Actually, the project leader is my couple who is who's taking our daughter into the bath. So she might be in my place here. So in behalf of all my team members, and thanks to all, and it's a pity not to see the participants, just to say bye-bye with the hand. Maybe they are drums or something. But great to know they are there.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Right.
everybody.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Wow.
Wow.